Don't touch her hand, Kira. The disinfectant hasn't worn off yet. The man's voice was low, laced with a hint of impatience, cutting through my muddled consciousness like shards of ice. My eyelids felt as heavy as lead, and the moisture on my eyelashes, whether sweat or tears, I couldn't tell. I could barely pry them open, my vision a blur of white. Caspar, I just wanted to see if she's woken up, the woman's voice cooed, with an unmistakable trace of triumph. The doctor said it's a miracle she survived this. If she hadn't made it, what would have happened to my illness? Caspar. The name pricked at me like a needle, jolting my muddled mind into partial clarity. It was my Caspar, the one who'd bring me hot cocoa when I worked late, who'd fumble to make me brown sugar ginger tea during my period, who'd hold me and say, "Serena, I'm here for you." But why had his tone been so cold just now? I tried to call out to him, but my throat felt scraped raw, only managing weak, ragged gasps. A sharp, throbbing pain pulsed in my chest, as if my ribs were broken, and every breath sent a searing ache through me. My left wrist was wrapped in thick bandages, numb yet stabbing with pain, I remembered now. It was a car accident. A runaway truck, a violent crash, and Caspar shouting my name as he lunged toward me. "What's the hurry?" Caspar's voice sounded again, closer this time. I could feel him standing beside my hospital bed. "The doctors have already confirmed her vitals are all good. We just need to wait for her to wake up and stabilize for a few days, then we can schedule the surgery. Kira, all you need to do is rest and stop worrying unnecessarily." "Surgery? What surgery?" I frowned, straining to open my eyes wider, my vision gradually clearing. Caspar stood at the foot of the bed, dressed in a black suit, his hair neatly combed, though a hint of exhaustion lingered between his brows. Beside him stood a woman in a white dress, her face pale. It was Kira, Caspar's distant cousin. She'd been diagnosed with kidney failure some time ago and had been waiting for a suitable donor. Kira's gaze fell on me, a blatant, appraising look, as if I were a mere commodity. She slipped her arm through Caspar's, resting her head on his shoulder, her voice soft and syrupy, "But I'm still scared, Caspar. What if she refuses when she wakes up? I've heard living donor transplants are risky. What if she backs out?" "Back out?" Caspar scoffed, a coldness in his laugh that sent chills down my spine. "What right does she have to back out? She was born to save you, from the very start." "Born to save you." Those words hit me like a sledgehammer, erasing the pain in my chest in an instant. My blood felt as if it had frozen in my veins. "Caspar, what do you mean by that?" Kira asked, feigning surprise, a smirk glinting in her eyes. "Exactly what I said," Caspar replied, his voice flat and emotionless. 3 years ago, when I found her, I had her blood type and genetic sequence tested. She's a perfect match for you. If your condition hadn't been stable back then, I would have never wasted so much time on her. 3 years ago. That was when we first met. At a corner cafe, I'd spilled coffee all over his suit, panicking, but he'd just smiled and said it was fine. Later, he'd asked for my contact information and started courting me. He remembered all my likes and dislikes, how I hated cilantro, how I took my lattes without sugar, how I was afraid of thunderstorms. Every time it thundered, he'd hold me tight and tell me jokes to distract me. I'd thought it was love, a fated connection. But now, it was clear, it had all been an elaborate lie. Every kind gesture, every tender moment, had been just to keep me healthy, waiting for the day he could take my kidney and give it to Kira. So you approached her all for me?" Kira's voice trembled with feigned gratitude. "Caspar, I knew you loved me the most. But you put so much effort into her, I couldn't help but feel jealous sometimes." "Jealous of her?" Caspar chuckled, his tone dripping with disdain. "Kira, how could you even compare yourself to her? She's nothing but an organ substitute, a tool to save your life. I was nice to her just to keep her in good shape. If something had happened to her, where would we find another match for you? A tool. I'd never been anything more than a tool to him. All those sweet words, all those intimate moments, all those vows of love, they'd all been lies. I couldn't help but tremble violently, tears streaming down my cheeks and soaking into the pillow, cold against my skin. I wanted to argue, to confront him, but only hoarse, wheezing sounds escaped my throat, like a broken bellows. She moved. Kira suddenly pointed at me, her voice laced with panic. Caspar whipped around, his gaze locking onto mine. Those eyes I'd once adored, deep and gentle, were now filled with nothing but cold scrutiny and a faint, uneasy wariness. He reached out, checking my pulse and brushing his hand against my forehead. His movements were still familiar, but they lacked the warmth they'd once held. Just a reflex. She's still unconscious, he pulled his hand back, his voice calm again. The doctor said she has a head injury and might be in a coma for a while. Perfect, saves us the trouble. That's such a relief. Kira exhaled, a bright smile spreading across her face. Once she wakes up and stabilizes, I can have the surgery. Caspar, after I get better, will you marry me? I want to be your bride. Yes, Caspar said softly, yet with unwavering certainty. Once you're well, we'll get married. We'll go to Provence for our honeymoon, just like you've always wanted. Provence. That was the place I'd always dreamed of visiting. I'd told Caspar countless times how I wanted to go there with him, to see the endless fields of lavender and kiss him in the sunlight. He'd laughed and promised me, saying we'd go for our first wedding anniversary. Turns out, every promise he'd made to me had been meant for someone else. My heart felt as if it were being stabbed by 1,000 needles, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, forcing myself not to make a sound, my nails digging deep into my palms, but I didn't feel a thing. The agony in my heart was far too overwhelming. By the way, Caspar, Kira suddenly remembered something, have you taken care of her parents? I heard they dote on her. What if they find out and cause trouble? Don't worry, Caspar's voice turned cold and ruthless. I've already arranged for them to go on a trip abroad. They can't come back without my permission. And I told them Serena's doing fine here, so they don't have to worry. After the surgery, I'll tell them she died from complications of the car accident. You're so amazing, Caspar, Kira looked at him adoringly. Now no one can stand in our way. I'd do anything for you, Caspar leaned down, pressing a kiss to Kira's forehead. That same kiss he'd planted on my forehead so many times before, once filled with tenderness and love, now it made me feel sick to my stomach. I closed my eyes, unable to bear the sight of their intimacy. Memories of Caspar and me flooded my mind, all those beautiful moments now felt like sharp knives, slicing through my heart one by one. I remembered the first time he walked me home, standing outside my building until my bedroom light came on. I remembered the grand surprise he'd planned for my birthday, making me cry tears of joy. I remembered how he'd stayed by my side day and night when I was sick, feeding me medicine and wiping my forehead. I remembered him holding me, whispering in my ear, Serena, I love you. I'll only ever love you. It had all been a lie. Every single word. He'd approached me, used me, and maybe even, the car accident hadn't been an accident at all. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. I remembered that day, Caspar had been supposed to go out with me, but he'd suddenly said he had an emergency at work and told me to go alone. Then, out of nowhere, the truck had come crashing toward me. It had happened so fast, as if it had been premeditated. Could it be? He'd arranged the accident? To get me hospitalized, making it easier for the surgery later? I didn't dare think any further. The more I thought about it, the more terrifying it became. Caspar was a master of disguise, pretending to be the perfect lover, making me fall for him completely, trusting him with everything. But deep down, he was crueler than the devil. Caspar, when can we schedule the surgery? Kira's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. In a few more days, Caspar said. Once the doctors confirm she's fully stable, we'll go ahead. I've already spoken to the hospital director. He'll arrange the best doctors for you, everything will be perfect. Okay. Kira nodded eagerly. With you here, Caspar, I'm not afraid of anything. They exchanged more intimate words, but I couldn't make them out clearly. My ears were buzzing, the pain in my chest growing more intense by the second, and the beeping of the heart monitor speeding up, as if mourning my fate. I couldn't accept this. I wouldn't let them treat me like a tool, take my organ, and then discard me like trash. I had to survive. I had to escape. I had to expose their plot and make them pay for what they'd done. That thought gave me a glimmer of hope. I began to strain my fingers, my left wrist throbbing with pain, but I kept trying, desperate to lift the blanket covering me. I wiggled my feet too, hoping to catch the attention of a nurse outside. By the way, Caspar, Kira's voice sounded again. Yesterday I saw a message on her phone from a guy named Ezra, asking when she'd be free to get dinner. Who is this Ezra? Could he be one of her suitors? Ezra. My childhood best friend. We'd grown up together, and he'd always looked out for me. Caspar knew him too, he'd even told me once that Ezra was a good friend. No one important, Caspar said, irritation creeping into his voice. I've already taken her phone away. No one will bother her anymore. Besides, it doesn't matter, she won't live much longer anyway. You're right, Kira laughed. Someone like her doesn't deserve to be loved, and she definitely doesn't deserve to stand between us. I couldn't hold back any longer. Summoning all my strength, I let out a hoarse cry, Caspar. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the two of them fall silent instantly. Caspar and Kira turned around, staring at me in shock. Panic flashed across Kira's face, while Caspar's expression was a mix of surprise and a faint, menacing coldness. Why, you're awake. Kira stepped back, her voice trembling. I opened my eyes, glaring at Caspar fiercely, tears streaming down my face. My voice was hoarse, but filled with overwhelming anger. Caspar. I heard everything you said. Caspar's face darkened instantly. He strode over to the bed, reaching out to press my shoulders down, his voice icy. Serena, you just woke up. Don't move around. Rest. Don't touch me. I pushed his hand away with all my strength, the sudden movement sending a sharp pain through my chest. I coughed violently, and a mouthful of blood spilled from my lips. Serena. Caspar's brows furrowed deeper, panic flaring in his eyes. He reached out to cover my mouth. You just woke up, stop being ridiculous. Kira and I were just joking. There's no such thing as an organ transplant. Joking? I turned my head to avoid his hand, letting out a bitter, hoarse laugh. The pain in my chest made every word shake, but it didn't diminish my anger. Caspar, do you take me for a fool? 3 years. You lied to me for 3 years. You remembered my likes, stayed with me through thunderstorms, all just for my kidney. To save Kira's life. To you, I'm nothing but a heartless organ substitute, a tool you can throw away anytime, isn't that right? No, Serena, let me explain. Caspar tried to defend himself, still lying. Explain what? I raised my voice, ignoring the burning pain in my throat, my eyes locked onto his. Explain how you forged my parents' travel documents. Explain how you bribed the truck driver to cause the accident. Explain how you colluded with the hospital director to declare me dead after taking my kidney. Caspar, you treat everyone like pawns. Is your heart black or just frozen cold? My words hit him like a knife to the heart. The mask slipped from his face completely, and malice oozed from his eyes. He stepped forward, grabbing my wrist so tightly I thought it would snap. Since you heard everything, there's no point in pretending. That's right, I approached you just for your kidney. Kira is the only person I'll ever protect. For her, I'd sacrifice you without a second thought, even if it means dragging the whole world down with me. Sacrifice me? The excruciating pain in my wrist mixed with the agony in my heart, but I stared back at him defiantly, my words sharp and clear. Caspar, who do you think you are? You think 3 years of fake affection gives you the right? You think your money can buy everything? I'm a human being. I have the right to live. How dare you build your happiness on my grave? I'm the one who decides whether you live or die. Caspar's voice was icy, his grip tightening even more. I let out a whimper of pain, but he didn't care. Serena, be smart and cooperate. After the surgery, I'll give you some money and let you go. But if you resist, I can make sure your parents never come back. Ezra will disappear from this city forever. Don't test me. He was threatening me. Using my parents, using Ezra against me. I looked at the man in front of me, familiar yet completely foreign. My heart was filled with despair and rage. I'd once seen him as the light of my life, but now he'd become the devil dragging me into the abyss. You're dreaming. I gritted my teeth, every word filled with determination. Caspar, I'd rather die than give you my kidney. Over my dead body. Do you think you have a choice? Caspar sneered, turning to Kira. Kira, go outside. I need to talk to her alone. Kira nodded, glancing at me with a triumphant, malicious smile before walking out of the room and closing the door behind her. I was left alone with Caspar, the air in the room thick with tension. He walked over to the bed, staring down at me with cold, murderous intent in his eyes. Serena, I'll give you one last chance, his voice was low and dangerous. Cooperate with the surgery, and I'll make sure your parents are safe. Otherwise, you'll regret it. I said nothing, just stared at him fiercely. I knew I was weak, powerless against him. But I would never give in. I wouldn't let his evil plan succeed. Just then, the door suddenly opened, and a nurse walked in, holding an IV bag. Sir, it's time to change the patient's dressing. Caspar's expression flickered for a moment before returning to calm. He stepped aside. Go ahead. The nurse walked over to the bed and began to change my dressing. I looked at her, a desperate idea popping into my head. While Caspar wasn't looking, I signaled to her with my eyes, then whispered weakly, "Help me." The nurse froze, looking at me in confusion, her hand pausing mid-movement with the IV tube. Caspar immediately sensed something was wrong, stepping in front of me to block the nurse, his voice cold and threatening. She just woke up, she's disoriented and talking nonsense. Hurry up with the dressing change. Don't waste time here. Leave as soon as you're done. He emphasized the word soon, his fierce gaze making the nurse flinch. The nurse glanced at Caspar, then back at me, confusion written all over her face. But she quickened her pace, finishing the dressing change in a hurry. She turned and walked out of the room. Save your breath, Serena, Caspar leaned over me, a sneer on his face. The vice director of this hospital is my uncle. Every nurse and doctor here takes orders from me. No matter how loud you scream, no one will come to save you. Just wait for the surgery, it's for the best. I closed my eyes, refusing to look at him. I knew I couldn't give up. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, I had to hold on. I had to wait for a chance to escape. Caspar stayed in the room for a while, watching me. When he saw I wasn't going to speak, he turned and left, locking the door behind him. I was alone again, the beeping of the heart monitor echoing sharply in the room. I lay there, tears streaming down my face, thinking of my parents, of Ezra, of all the happy moments I'd once had. I couldn't die like this. I had to live. I had to get out of here. I began to move my body, every movement sending a sharp pain through me, but I didn't stop. I turned my head toward the window. The sun was shining brightly outside, but my heart was filled with darkness. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure outside the window. It was Ezra. What was he doing here? Ezra saw me too, surprise flashing across his face. He rushed over to the door, trying to open it, but it was locked. He banged on the door frantically, shouting my name, Serena. Serena. Are you okay? Hearing Ezra's voice, I trembled with excitement. Summoning all my strength, I shouted back, Ezra. Help me. Caspar, he's trying to kill me. He wants to take my kidney for Kira. Ezra's voice filled with rage and panic. He kicked the door hard. Serena, don't be scared. I'll get you out of there. I already called the police, they'll be here soon. The police. A surge of hope filled my heart. Finally, there was a chance. Just then, Caspar's voice came from the hallway, filled with anger, Ezra. What are you doing here? Caspar, you bastard. Ezra shouted, his voice boiling with fury. How could you do this to Serena? You're not human. Since you know, there's no need to hide it anymore, Caspar said coldly, followed by the sound of furniture being knocked over. No one is saving her today. Ezra, I was going to let you live, but you just had to come here and die. I heard the sound of a fight breaking out outside, my heart pounding with anxiety. I tried to sit up, but my body was too weak to move. A few moments later, the sound of police voices echoed, freeze. Police. The fighting stopped. Soon, the door was opened, and the police walked in, followed by Ezra. As soon as he saw me, Ezra rushed to the bed, his face filled with concern. Serena, are you okay? Did he hurt you? I looked at Ezra, tears streaming down my face, shaking my head. I'm okay. Ezra, thank you. Caspar was handcuffed, his face pale with anger and unwillingness. He stared at me fiercely, as if he wanted to devour me alive. Kira was brought in too. When she saw Caspar in handcuffs, her legs gave way, and she almost fell. The police held her up, and she burst into tears, screaming, "It's not my fault. I had nothing to do with this. Caspar forced me. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd stop my treatment. I'm a victim too." The police glared at her. "We'll investigate whether you're a victim at the station. Be quiet and come with us." Caspar and Kira were taken away by the police. Ezra stayed with me, and a doctor soon arrived to examine me. "The patient's condition is stable for now, but she needs plenty of rest," the doctor said. "She has a head injury and may have some after effects. She'll need further observation and treatment." Ezra nodded. "Doctor, please take good care of her. I'm counting on you." After the doctor left, Ezra sat beside my bed, looking at me with a pained expression. "Serena, I'm so sorry I was late. I always thought Caspar was too good to be true, too perfect. I wanted to warn you, but I had no proof. Yesterday, I texted you, but you didn't reply. I got worried, so I went to your house, but you weren't there. Your neighbor told me you'd been in a car accident and were taken here. When I arrived, I heard Caspar and Kira talking in the room. That's when I found out about their plan." I looked at Ezra, my heart filled with gratitude. "Ezra, thank you. If it weren't for you, I might have already." "Don't say that," Ezra cut me off, gently taking my hand. "Serena, it's all over now. Caspar and Kira will pay for what they did. I've already contacted your parents, they'll be back soon." I nodded, tears streaming down my face again. This time, they weren't tears of sorrow, but of relief and gratitude. The sun streamed through the window, warming my face. I knew the nightmare was finally over. I'd lost my love and been hurt deeply, but I was still alive. I had my parents who loved me, and friends who cared about me. I would heal, I would recover. I would forget Caspar, that scoundrel, and leave this painful memory behind. The road ahead was long, but I believed I would find someone who truly loved me, and I would have the happiness I deserved.